Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. Today we got Brett Cauchi back on round two. It's been a couple years. We were chatting over the text thread and threw out an invitation, and he was like, "Let's do it. Let's talk about the growth we've made over the last 3 years in this new school." Head basketball coach on the women's side and teaches strength and conditioning and a few other things I'm sure he'll tell us about. Brett, great to have you back.
Thank you, sir.
All
Excited to be
right.
back.
Yeah,
Miss
yeah. I've been trying to get you up here every year for the last 15 years, and you keep giving me the Heisman one of these days, but all good. 5 second background version, and I'll link your old episode in the show notes so we don't have to spend 20 minutes doing that. But give the highlights, the elevator pitch, and then I want to actually get into some back and forth.
Dixon, California. Can't hide that Ram pride. Solano Community College, hooped. Linfield College, hooped. Went to Chico State, coached. Folsom Lake College, coached. Now at Rancho Solano High School in Scottsdale, Arizona, coaching.
There it is. That's perfect. Okay, let's get into this. Hey, last time we talked, you said this school finally felt like a mission appropriate fit for you after kind of being in different places and trying to figure out what the calling was. Now that you've had a little more runway in the job, what do you think has confirmed that most clearly? And I know we were just talking a little bit about it offline, but as you and I both lean on you just said it, be where your feet are, right? But that only works if you're in a place that's actually aligned with who
Mhm.
you are and what you want to do. So talk a little bit about whether or not that's been validated, that feeling you have, and how that's been confirmed over the last 3 years since we chatted.
For sure. I will say, I think, or I know at Dixon, Chico, Folsom, the basketball aligned and the adult people aligned. But being here, I've really realized like kids alignment and understanding the impact that I can have that I got right when I was growing up from all my coaches and teachers and my peers. So that alignment, that's been a calling where I realize I'm good at it and I can influence kids and brighten their day and hype them up because that's what I do more than coach basketball. Basketball's 5% of it, but getting a fist bump kids every day and hype them up and coach them and mentor that. I didn't realize that was such a passion of mine until I was in it.
It's interesting because, like, part of your early coaching development with Point Guard College was about that piece. And I don't want to say masquerading as a high energy human, but it's like you almost have to train yourself to do that. And for you to say, I didn't realize how important that piece was surprises me. So give me a little peek behind the curtain on why that even surprised yourself. That was such an important part of what you do.
Yeah, I think especially PGC and at Folsom, like PGC, we have kids for 5 days, and now I get to see them the next year. But I really only get to coach them for 4.5 days, and immense growth in that. And then Folsom, we had girls for 1 to 2 years. Now I still have a lot of relationships with those former players, but not directly coaching them. I've had now a kid in her third year. I'm like, oh, you can grow from that from a sophomore to a senior. Or I have these sixth graders now who are like the most adorable basketball heads ever. I'm like, I get to coach you, what's that, for 7 years, 8 years, start fifth grade. So I think seeing my impact and seeing the growth that is capable of kids over a period of time, and this it still hasn't even been 3 full years yet. I'm like, wow, that it's insane. Yeah, I think I know it's my duty to live in that and have to be all in because again, that's why I'm here, is because people did to me.
Have you found any particular challenges in doing that? And specifically, what I'm curious about, and you mentioned this, that the lower schools existed longer than the high school, right? So in theory, you're going down to at least fourth and fifth grade and probably younger. I forget what you said, but working with a sixth grader and working with a 12th grader, while they're all kids, while they're all players, it is a different developmental age and stage. And obviously, you've spent a lot of time in the summers growing up doing that. But when it's your day-to-day calling, are there things that you have found that are more challenging for you and things that come easier? And I ask that in regards to me being 26 years into a teaching career, having spent a day or two in the elementary space, and having spent a handful of days and weeks in the middle school space. I am a high school guy. This is where I belong. This is the age group that works
Mhm.
for me. And while I enjoy moonlighting as a middle school coach at times, I definitely am not built for the day-to-day rigor of that. So I'd love to get your take on that cross comparison now that you're fuller, more deeply in the weeds on that than you were the last time.
Yeah, I'm glad I teach high school. I'm glad I coach middle school. And I've always had respect for any and all teachers, but to have these kids in an 80-minute block in an English class and you're a seventh grader, like I pray for them every night because I have them in golf and the attention span. But no, they're all great kids. And I want to talk more about that. It's something I learned over the years. But my approach to, especially more specifically middle school, is how do we just get them loving Rancho? Like we've had a retainment kind of issue from what I've learned and getting kids to stay here in high school. And I think the biggest thing is like the spirit and the culture of it and looking at the high schoolers as, oh my gosh, I want to be like them, not I'm going to this bigger school or this private school after. So really just getting the excitement for being a Mustang. And then for my high schoolers, just understanding just because a freshman's on varsity doesn't mean they have a senior's brain. And I've learned to really study the psychology and the brain development of kids, but understanding it is a long game. And I like to equate it to the stray puppy. I'm not going to just run up to it. Like I'm going to put little breadcrumbs and then they start to trust a little bit more, trust a little bit more. And until you gain that trust. I'm sure I said this last time, but one of the best piece of advice I got for coaching girls basketball is you bond to battle, boys, you battle to bond. And I could not be more evident here. And I'm a Bond guy. So that's why, not James Bond, but I'm a Bond guy. So that's why I think this is the right fit for me coaching girls.
I do not remember that from last time, but that is gold, and I love that. And I think you're dead on. And having been on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, I think that resonates very much. And I need
Mhm.
to keep that front of mind as we go forward. When you got to the school, your natural energy giving, relationship building instincts were embedded, and that is the easy part. What aspects beyond that in the job have you realized require more structure than energy?
One, just planning my day. Because as a college coach, I came in to do study hall early, or I got in at 9, 10 o'clock, practice, film, recruit, go home. Now it's here between 6:15 and 7:30 every day, and just the structure of it. So learning that was year one. Two, I think just all of the logistical things behind the scene that have nothing to do with even my program that are my responsibilities. And that's what I'm being paid to do, right? I'm not actually being paid to coach basketball. So that's been the biggest change, but I've loved it too because it's serving our campus. So adjusting to that and understanding like things can wait on the basketball side, especially this off season. It's middle school basketball. It's driving golf to this and swim to that and covering a class here and there. But that's been my biggest adjustment.
It's interesting, right? As you get into this at whatever level, where it's so easy to forget to keep the main thing, especially in education-based athletics, where you got into it because you are a basketball nerd. And the reality is that's a hobby. You're getting paid to teach. And how do you balance where all of your attention is being pulled one direction, but the real thing is over here? And it's been a conversation I've had with some of my younger colleagues over the years where it's, look, man, I know that this is what you really love to do, but this is paying the bills. So you
Yeah.
got to figure out how to balance that. Do you have any advice, recommendations, right? You're now, whatever, 15 years into a coaching career, but three being like a head coach and running a program where it's all on you, and you're now having the same realization. What advice do you have for others that may be just getting their feet in the water of being, to your point, paid to teach, not to coach?
Yeah. I think and the switch for me was every class is just a different team. Like it's my duty to coach them as I would coach my own team. And now there's differences between, I think, expectations, right? If Sally is new to weightlifting, I'm not going to get on her for not getting her mile time, but understanding that what she needs in that class might help her in 10 years when she's, oh, we did that in Coach Cauchi's class. Let me do that circuit. So understanding like what seeds I can plant just in the aspect of the class. And then I think too is the community is a team, right? So I haven't verbalized this before. This is good. Yeah, I believe your class is a team, the faculty is a team, everything's a team, right? And so you're either a part of the team as faculty, how do I best represent myself? How do I best show up? And then two, like when I'm leading these other teams, okay, if this were my basketball team, how would I show up? And that flipped a switch last year. And honestly, it's made my days much easier because the why is way more clear.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So last time we talked, you said the standard is the standard and that you were no longer the likable assistant. We probably joked about how nobody rides in your van anymore, like all the cliches, right? What have you learned about balancing warmth and accountability since then? Because it is a, what's the cliche? A thin line to thread or a needle to thread, something to that effect. But I'm curious, like, how that's evolved.
Yeah. Well, I am going to read The Courage to Be Disliked. That's on my list. But no, I don't know if this sounds weird, but I know I'm still young. I get it. But like now I'm like dad. Like I'm not big brother anymore. So it's okay to be dad. What did my dad teach me? What did your dad teach you? What do you teach your kids? No, I'm not going to tell you what you like all the time. But like, I do know what's best for you. And that's one thing. Teenagers really have no idea what's good for them
Wait,
because I
what? They don't know everything?
they really don't. But I meet them where they're at, but I understand that time has passed and I've come to terms with that. And I like this role. This is my purpose. This is my role now. And I had fun for 9 years or whatever it was being an assistant, but that's not my job anymore. And I actually enjoy this job better in a sense because again, I'm not a dad yet, one day, but like I'm starting to see my accountability and standards showing off in ways that I'm like, okay, yeah, we're doing it right. Also hiring assistants that are likable so that they can just talk to them and deal with all their stuff.
For sure. That's great perspective. I think it's awesome. It's going to continue to evolve. I would say that I'm more like grandpa at this point, and I've moved back to that side of things for the most part. I don't have an empty van. I got like a certain crew that rolls with me and a certain crew that rolls with my assistant. And there's a way to do it, right? You don't have to go completely over on the Herbie Brooks side of I'm not here to be your friend. That's their job. But I think it's great that you're starting to think through that stuff. All right, so 14 and 4, 11 and 3 this year. When you look at that, what part of the progress were outsiders able to see? And what would you say did they miss because they're not behind the curtain, right? Which is a jump from where you were. So it looks like, oh, we're really pushing this boulder up the hill to anybody that's looking at a data sheet, but they're not in the day to day. So it's a complex question, but it's like what's obvious to outsiders, but what are they not really taking with them because they're not there?
Yeah, I think just from a results standpoint, it's the most wins we've had. We went to the quarterfinals. We lost to the eventual state champ in a bloodbath game. Super fun. We statistically the best. We're from just a measurable standpoint. The results are there. What they don't see, and this was my absolute just favorite thing. It started at the end of year two, and it was all of this year. We just learned how to love getting our butts kicked and being in tough situations. And like it happened in our last game. Like we were down 23 in the fourth and call timeout and nothing is going right for us at all. And the girls are like, we can do this. Not me. Like I get goosebumps thinking about it because that was my message for 2.5 years. We can win. We're only down 10, cut it to 7, whatever we can do. And we cut the thing down to 8 and we ran out of gas. And the team we lost to, St. John's, it's an awesome program, deserved to win the whole thing. But it's like, that was like my moment where I'm like, yeah, we've got it. I don't care what happens after this because they're like, guys, it's like we're right there. I'm like 20 down 23 with 7 minutes left. Like that, you're not really there.
What was that timeout like then for you? I remember when Tyler was a senior, we're playing at Arco Arena and we're playing our nemesis, Sac High, and we were down God, I want to say we were down 17 in the second quarter, and I called a timeout and just started laughing at him. And I'm like, look around, this is where you wanted to be, and now this is what you're doing. Come on, guys, figure it out. And there was
Yeah,
nothing like transformational, but it was like
yeah,
the tension breaker, right? And if you are idiots, look where you are. You've got everything you ever wanted.
yeah.
Chill out. What was your timeout like? What have you learned about those moments that better prepares you for next year?
I think, well, I want to rewind to the game prior. We were playing our rival, which none of my girls had ever beaten since middle school. So 0-8 against them. And we're at their place and we're the 10 seed, they're the 7 seed. And we go up 16-0 to start the game. And we have 75% of our fans in this in on the road. So I'm like, that moment. I'm like, look what like you've done, like the sport you've built. Like they believe in you, you believe in you. And so to fast forward again, like they just firmly believed that it was possible. And I didn't say much in that timeout. And I like to talk in timeouts. So it was much player led. And we had a senior, a freshman, like we had all ages be like, no, we got this. Just a couple stops. Like we'll get trapped. Heidi hit a three. Like it was just, it was so cool. And to fast forward a little bit more, we do all of our individual meetings. And where I got so excited is every single player is just absolutely hungry to get better this offseason. I'm like, you, I know it's basketball, but that mindset's going to carry you way further than scoring a couple points.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. We also talked about simplicity wins, right? Something that has been a mantra from other places, but something that's really hard to wrap your head around, especially as a younger coach, where the answer sometimes feels like if I just add this or if we just do this, it'll simplify things. And so I'm curious, where did you discover moments where you needed more complexity? Were there things that because you didn't give in to that impulse where you just got better and better at something because it was simplified? And I'm really curious because you and Tyler are pretty much on the same timeline of being in year three of being a head coach. And what have you learned around that? And what advice do you have about not chasing the newest and greatest thing and maybe sitting into to what you believe in? And I know that's hard, and I'd love to get your take on that after 3 years and where you've had to be disciplined versus learning some lessons the hard way, so to speak. Wherever you
Yeah.
want to go with that's fine. I think you get the idea.
Two things come to mind. One, and this is something I've been learning, especially this past year, but like everything is just patterns. Like we've watched how many games in our career, like what's going to happen is going to happen usually, unless someone banks in a three at the end. That's just, but that percentage is so low. And especially, this isn't the WNBA. This isn't Division One. What's going to usually happen in every high school basketball game usually happens. Once I figure that out and I let go of that control, I'm like, okay, if we just do these three things, we're going to put ourselves in a position to win, or we're not going to beat this team. And that's okay. Or they're not going to beat us. And that's okay. So I think that's the first part. And the second part is it really doesn't matter. Like all the things that I know and the plays and that it really doesn't. Like the reason we lost our last game was because they shot 38 more shots than us. Not because they ran any cooler players or not because we didn't execute. Like they just had the ball more than we did. So simplicity, have the ball more than the other team, and you're probably going to win the game.
And beyond that, can you share? I don't want to say there was this seminal moment when you realized that and just stripped a bunch of stuff out, but I'm sure you went through some moments where you were grasping at straws. Like, how do you create the discipline to not do that going forward? And you and I have talked about some of the trapping defense and whatnot, but it's like, how do you also, I guess, cultivate and figure out your identity? So coming from Folsom Lake, especially on the offensive end, where Coach Baxter is like king of let's just add, and there's all these different things, right? And you and I both spent a ton of time with him. And then there's where it's like, no, we're burning the boats and we're just doing this. And that's part of the conversation that I've had mentoring some of my younger coaches. It's easy for me because I'm a one-trick pony. I don't get distracted by the noise because I'm not interested in that. This is what we're doing, and come hell or high water. But early career, like you're still trying to figure out your identity. Can you
Yeah.
share what you've learned about yourself over the last 3 years and how you've gotten to that point and why you believe what you do and maybe how that helps tune out some of the noise?
Yeah, I mean, it really started with Fogel, like at Chico, and then with even a lot with Brett Peterson at Dixon when I was with him for a couple of years, and then with Ali at Folsom. Fogel calls it burgers and fries. Why is In and Out so good? All I sell is burgers and fries. And yeah, sorry, I'm just like 40 things in my head.
No, just get them
Not
together because I'm
very,
laughing because that is totally a Fogelism. I love it.
very much so. He always grounds me. I call him at the right times during the year.
If he answers and his flip phone is working.
He has an iPhone now.
Wow, upgrade, Coach Fogues. Good job, buddy.
It's not simple. Don't tell him about AI though. No, I think the moment, again, it wasn't like a seminal moment, but especially coming from college to high school, you control less. So it's let's just put them in situations to be really tough, play really hard, and then we'll get better at the basketball stuff. But also like having swallowed my pride enough to sit in a 2-3. My AD gave me the best advice. He goes, "What's your job right now?" Like during the game. I go, "To win." He goes, "Then win the game." Like long term we can figure it out, but your job right now is to win the game. So I think just like whatever the game calls, but not trying to overcomplicate it. If it is a 2-3, cool. If it's trapping, cool. That's what we're going to do. If it's play fast, also cool.
What systems have you built now after 3 years at Rancho Solano? Maybe they came with you, maybe they didn't, but what have you built that would survive even if your personality wasn't in the room? And by that, at schools like ours, as much as we would prefer programmatic and institutional systems and memory, so much of it is personnel driven based on who's leading a particular endeavor program. What do you think would sustain if your personality was removed from the room?
If you ask me 3 months ago, I could not be in practice and it would run completely fine. My seniors, Nina, Annika, Alicia, and Nina's going on to play college basketball. They could run the ship along with my juniors and their leaderships. That's what the fun part is now is who's going to be leaders now that they're gone. But I think, honestly, I think the people around here care so much about all the other athletics that it would work still. And they care about the kids that they would figure out a way to keep it going without my personality. My assistants are awesome. They align and they bring the juice and they understand what it takes. One was an NAIA All-American. The other was a manager under Molly Miller at Grand Canyon. So they know what it looks and sounds and feels like. But yeah, my players, I know they would do right by me.
So we were talking about this offline and we talked about it the last time and what kind of the long game looks like. And you said, I'm where my feet are, which is great. It's where you want to be. But it was more, I'm more curious about, you said you were finally beginning to understand the long game. This is the last time we were recording. I'm curious what that means for you now in practical terms, right? Roster building, culture and player development, parent education, all of it is because now I'm like here. I'm not just dipping in for a little while looking to do something else. What does that look like for you now?
Yeah, I think the more I've been in it, the like I said, patterns and for lack of a better term, like being able to see the future. Like I have this eighth grader, I've had this kid before, right? And the trajectory that they're on now, they deviate a little bit, but and I learn it from my AD coach Trig all the time. It's the same story, different kid. He's been doing it for 13 years. And I think understanding a player's potential early, I can see where they're going to end up. But the fun part is the kids who you don't really see it, but they just work their butts off and you know they're just going to figure it out. So that's from like a player personnel standpoint. And then just like being more ingrained in the community, like understanding our program is growing and getting better. And again, I have a great sample size with our boys program. Like now they're sought after. The kids want to be a part of it. And I'm just like weirdly patient. I'm weirdly, my dad taught me a lot of that. Fogel's really patient. Allie's really patient. So I understand things really don't happen fast. And I've tried that game and it doesn't work. That's why I stopped playing blackjack because I lose every time.
I love that. No, it's such a good lesson there is that you have to be patient, right? And what you think you can accomplish in a year sometimes takes five. And do you have the wherewithal to see it through? And on that, right, in an era where people chase instant gratification, that's probably a hard thing to navigate. What have you had to teach parents most directly in this role? Not about patience per se, but things that maybe it's, yo, chill out. Like, it's not my first rodeo. Things that are front of mind that you make sure maybe you hit at the beginning of the year proactively rather than reactively.
No, great question. And then I want to ask you a follow up after that from you being a parent. I think the one, I'm very blessed that a handful of my parents have been with me for these 3 years, and they've seen the growth in the process. They've seen what it was, and they've seen what it's become. So they give me so much support, and I don't even know what they say behind the scenes, but I know they have my back. And then two, like, I'm just completely honest with them from the start. I'm like, I have no idea if we're going to win 20 games next year. I don't know if we're going to win state. No clue. So many things happen or have to happen that I think it's like when you agree with someone who wants to fight, I'm just like, yeah, you're probably right. We might lose. I don't know what's going to happen. So I just am brutally honest, and I don't give any expectations as far as the extrinsic stuff, result stuff. I always say we always got a chance. I like who we have, but I say it's slow, it's arduous process. Like, it's not going to be fun. I'm going to make it as fun as I can. And I go, well, you can probably relate because a lot of our parents have done a lot of successful things, like sure at your school. So you didn't build that overnight. Come on, what do you expect that from us? That's not how it works. But I did want to ask you a question because you are in the long game, especially having parented teenage daughters. What have you seen and learned, and maybe advice you can give me of when they are middle schoolers to freshmen to stop, like they're just personality growth, like how they change over time.
Man, I don't even know where to begin with that. I think as because you were part of raising my children, I, as crazy as this sound, and I've said this for a long time, is that I parent by proxy through PGC as a foundational aspect at age 12 or 13, and then keep them in it because it gives me shared vocabulary with them in regards to, hey, life's not fair. Little things that are just nuggets that I feel I was fortunate enough to raise my kids, air quote, the right way, which is to not have expectations, to understand that everything comes from work and the lonely work at that, time alone and time on task. And I think that raising them in an environment like our school also provides co-parenting that you don't get other places. And I'm sure it's similar at your school where it takes a village, you have an advisor, you have other faculty where, most of the difficult conversations that happen, and I'll get to your other part of the question in a second, happen through my colleagues and through the people that my children have identified as important in their lives that are adults on this campus or in their sporting endeavors. And I'll offer this, and it's crazy, and I know it, but there's two non-negotiables in my house. You're playing three sports a year, and you're going on the 11-day sophomore wilderness trip. And everything else we can discuss, but we are not having a discussion around those things. And the three sport thing gets a little bit of pushback, and there's a caveat to it, which is if you decide after your sophomore year that you want to be elite at something, then we can sit down and have a conversation about what that recipe looks like and whether you want to opt into that, which neither of the girls wanted that. And my son loves playing three sports, so he's not going to do that. But it's the reason for that isn't to prop up my athletic department. It's not to create this cacophony of like athletic kids. It's that having my daughters play a season for you and then go play a season for the volleyball coach or the field hockey coach and then the softball coach, they're getting different perspectives. They're inhabiting different roles, which is how life works, right? You be the star on one team and you're a cheerleader on the other team, right? And you're learning that. And then the wilderness trip is the same thing. You're learning how to lead, you're learning how to follow, you're learning how to be part of something bigger than yourself, which I think ultimately is a lost art societally. People are generally selfish by nature, which is what they're supposed to be. And there's not a lot of boundaries put around those impulses. And so I think athletics does that. I think schools that prioritize the right things to the mission appropriate conversation do that. And then I think there's a collective holding of accountability that has made, excuse me, has given my personal children as a father the boundaries and the support systems that they need to thrive. Where my eldest still talks to her basketball coach regularly. My middle child, not necessarily in the same way. She's when she's back, she comes to practice, she sits on the bench. She's watching the freaking NBA finals by herself, texting me in the NCAA tournament, right? Where it's like I didn't do that with her. So I think there's that aspect of atmosphere that really matters. I think policing your kids' peer groups early matters. And I think if you're willing to do those things, it really creates a culture around them that helps them navigate hard times without mommy and daddy having to come save them. You can almost ignore them. And I would say this, just one more point, and then I'll get to the question about how I've noticed it with my own athletes and kids is we had a swim meet here on Friday. We had a middle school track meet here on Friday, and my son was at our local rival school playing lacrosse, and their AD, my assistant, used to work at their school with their AD, and they were talking, and he's, hey, I saw Lincoln playing lacrosse over here. I didn't know he'd become that good. I didn't see Climo though. Where was he? And my assistant's, oh, he don't go to road games. He's here running this meet and that meet, and I think there's part of I want to say Katz told me this a long time ago, and I ran with it where it was just like, I make it a point not to be at all of their stuff because I'm not going to be here all the time. I know you have some experience with that, but I also feel like the other thing I heard that I latched onto, and maybe it's just a good excuse for me, but if you're always present, then you take away your kid's power of story. And it's okay. They don't always share. Yeah, that's their choice. Like it's their experience. We had our turn. And if my son comes home and it's, yo, how was the game? And he's, oh, it's fine one. It's okay. That's all he wants to share. Okay. Like that's his prerogative, right? So anyway, so with my own children, I've been very intentional about who I surround them with, whose advisory they're in, how I work with those people to co-parent. And then I would
Mhm.
say what I have learned as a parent about coaching other people's kids is just like how important it is to have the right people around them and then what role you're playing. So as much as like you and I are going to be somewhat hard-edged about holding a standard, there also has to be empathy in regards to like their unformed developmental human beings. To your point, they may be really good but they're 14, and how do you keep that in mind, right? This is somebody else's precious cargo that they've given you to try to influence, and are you doing that justice? I think that navigating the transition from middle school to high school on the girl side specifically, and this is going to be a generalism, so nobody get mad at me here, but the societal pressure, especially in the social media age, that impacts our young women is really toxic. And trying to help navigate that, where they go from, hey, I'm a 12-month a year athlete to maybe bumping up against the it's not cool to be an athlete anymore, even though it is. And we've got to figure out how to tune out that noise. And so I think there's a lot of things pulling at their attention. And the thing about the wilderness trip is they don't have devices for 11 days. It's great for them. The thing about being in practice is they don't have a distraction for that 90 minutes or whatever. And so I think it's it's hard. I think I'm better at figuring out that every kid in there is an individual and needs to be treated as such, right? And fair is not equal. I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to treat you all inconsistently. I think that's something you learn over time. And I think there's pushback in regards to Jenny got to do X or whatever. And it's, hey, Jenny, in the moment, that was what was needed to make sure that they could thrive and or survive whatever's going on in their life at that time. So long rambling answer. I don't know if there's anything worthwhile in there, but that would be what I would share with you.
No, I took a lot. No, thank you for sharing. Yeah, it was one of my favorite first isms when I'm coaching here is when my players comes off and she just naturally has more of an attitude and gives me the biggest eye roll, palms up, whatever thing. What do I do? What do I do? And I started to go sit down, and my AD goes, "Are you like you gonna take that?" I go, "She don't mean it. Like she's just getting it out. I don't care. That's not a real. That's not a real
Mhm.
thing. If it was real, I would feel it, or I would know it was
Yeah.
real. So understanding one, they don't mean it personally. Like they're just trying to navigate all their emotions. And then two, I think you noticed, or I noticed you said was like meet them where they're at. One of the turning points for one of my relationships with my kids who's more hard edged and no problems in this and that, but just a soft human being at heart. But always, everyone's always saying, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this. And this was more last year in a couple years. And just every, especially male, adult male was, you're doing this wrong, you're in trouble. And I remember she just looked so stressed. I saw her earlier in the day. And so I take her out of class. She's like, what do I do? I go, girl, you need a walk. Let's go walk about. She
Mhm.
goes, what? Not in trouble. I go, no, can't you assume the best of me sometimes? And that was a fun little moment. So now our little thing is, can you assume the best of me? I'm going to assume the best in you. But I can also, she's the only one I can drop an F bomb on
Mhm.
because she can take it. But it wouldn't have happened without all those other stuff like you were saying. And again, I'm going to get it wrong a lot. I know that, but I'm trying. So trying to meet them where they're at.
Yeah. And listening to you say
Like
that,
you.
there's, you can't, you're not going to have the same relationship with everybody on your team. And it's like running a dorm here, right? There's 50 kids in the dorm. There's seven of us on the dorm faculty, and the questions that come up in our dorm heads group are, do you know every kid in the dorm? Do you have a relationship? And it's, I know every kid in the dorm. I don't have a relationship with them all, but every kid in my dorm has a relationship with one of the adults on the team, which is what's important, right? So maybe on your roster of 12, seven of them connect really well with you, and they're coming by the office, they're spending time, you're like a go-to, and two of them might be with one assistant, and three of them might be with the other assistant or with the trainer. And I think that's been an area where I don't want to say I've fallen into the habit, but I've definitely let some of that go in my role as the AD and the basketball coach, where it's like I got other fish to fry and I'm here if you need me. I'm gonna ask how things are going. But if I'm not your dude and you're next door talking to Jordy, great. There's
Yeah.
somebody that you go to, right? And I think that's the most important thing as we think about this is making sure everybody that you are responsible for from a caretaking perspective is covered. It doesn't have to be you, but like there has to be some sort of pathway to making sure they feel seen and heard, and information that's needed is making its way up and down the chain. What are your thoughts on that?
It's funny. I just read a book that I've had forever. I never read it. Season of Life.
So good.
So
So
good. I'm
good.
like, I'm pissed at myself for having it in my bookshelf for probably 6 years. But and it's funny because I'm also been on a reading kick lately, but I'm also reading Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. But I read Season of Life first, and coaches to players he goes, "What's our job?" And they say to love us. And what's your job? To love each other. And I'm like, that is it. And then I read this Auschwitz account, and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, love is that too. And anyway, just a lot of connectors in that. That's my job. It's to care for them, to love them. It doesn't always look the same. It's but the number one job is what is best in their best interest, and it just is such a good reminder because yeah, the best love I've gotten has been tough love sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's needed at times, right? You need to be able to receive the emotional outpouring, repackage it, and then set some boundaries to try to help them navigate the next time. And I think the more you can focus on the humanity of this, and sports are just a vehicle to get through that. And I think that's the hardest thing in season is it just becomes about the coaching piece, the sports specific coaching piece, and you forget about the other 22 2.5 hours of the day where really the developmental component of each of these kids are and how to recenter yourself into that, especially during the season.
I add one on that,
Yeah,
like
please.
a basketball specific for any coaches out there, any sport, but I think especially for girls, but we had our hardest schedule by far. We played 6A, 5A, and then the open small school champion in a tournament early. And we compete, but we get smacked. But and this is what equates to the timeout at the end of the year. Every time I'm like, this is so good for us. You have
Mhm.
no idea. That was my only thing I'm saying. I'm not getting mad. The only things I'll get mad are for effort. No, you can't beat the girl who's going to St. Mary's, North Carolina. I get that. I've played and I was lost every time.
Mhm.
But that was the message. And I think that's the tough love, but the loving them. It's like, this is so good for you. You can do hard things. But that's something I say every day to my group because I don't think that message is just getting given to people or to kids now as much.
No doubt. It's the Jocko Willink. Anything that happens is just good.
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
is gonna make me better. All right, we're short on time. Like a couple more. What has challenged you most that you did not see coming?
Time, lack thereof, and understanding where to put the time and that it's okay to say no to things. That's been the hardest thing is saying no. That's been the hardest.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Tell me the story. Give me an anecdote as to why and how you've learned to do that, because that is an essential skill that is going to unlock the next layer of your success.
Last spring was a nightmare. I teach all day, coach my middle school team, coach club basketball, and then have anywhere between 4 and 8 games to cover on the weekend. And it's just, I was miserable and burnt out. That's a specific one. And I said no to, I had to sacrifice something. I said no to club this year. And do I miss coaching club? Yeah, because I miss the different styles of it and coaching games that are high school level, but it's freed up everything else to just my own self health.
And as a result of that, so you're saying no to coaching club, you're trying to build a program that's dependent on continuous development. You have a small school. We talked about this briefly, but the need for these kids to do everything. Where are you now on that spectrum of growing up and being a basketball guy, coaching college where it's year round, to now being in a high school setting where your neighbor across the street might be playing 360 days a year and you're like, that'd be great, but I don't really think that's best, or I do. We just don't have the bandwidth. Like, where do you fall on that spectrum now?
From a coach, like my kids are awesome and it's fun to watch them play other sports and just be around them even when it's not actually especially when it's not in basketball season where it's low stakes. And then for me understanding the other things I can do especially to better myself, set myself up, sleep, diet, education, not that it was ever poor but it's taken that next level. uh, and I'm getting older, but it's taken that next level. This is what you can sustain when you do have a night or a couple of nights a week or your weekends free.
No doubt, for sure. I think that's important, that balance, even though most of us don't really act that way. What have you changed your mind on since our last interview? That's a question I always finish with, but I'm curious for a variety of reasons, but more importantly, just on the self-reflective. You're a reader, you're a guy that's constantly analyzing and trying to figure out the next best mousetrap. So where are you with changing your mind intentionally these days?
I'll give you a basketball one and then a life one. Basketball one is lift and offensive rebound. Be strong and go get the ball. Like, talk about simplicity. That has changed my mind. No play I've drawn up has outdone that. And then two, I touched on it, but everything is patterns. And like what I've learned in the last 6 months is go read about patterns, go watch patterns, go ask you people like you and other coaches and mentors their experiences and their patterns and just try to look for those patterns. So I've been in a pattern searching mode as of late.
I love that. It's funny because your AD had a comment about how to capture things. And while you said that, I was thinking about what I've been telling people lately. It's like, how are things? I'm like, same movie, different characters. And it's the pattern of Hey, I had to go to the disciplinary committee with one of my advisees the other day. It was like, that's not what I expected. That's not who I expected. But hey, there's a pattern of somebody doing something that they shouldn't have. And now, what's the takeaway, right? What's the lesson learned versus the shame of I am bad? I think those are the things that as educators, we're trying to point out, and the reps we get from doing it repeatedly sometimes make it easier the next time. So I love that's what you're focusing on. All right, I got one more, and then if you got anything else, you can hit me, and then we'll wrap up. But you came into this with the idea that everything has to be scored and competitive from a coaching standpoint. Where have you found that philosophy has actually not worked best, where you've actually had to adjust and be like, you know what, maybe this isn't the answer? And obviously, there are places where it does work well, but I'm
Yeah.
curious about the flip side.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest drivers for our improvement because the girls are so competitive. But the one specific area just happened the other day is shooting numbers and percentages, where because your number's not saying 35% or 40%, you think you're a bad shooter. And I know all shooters struggle with that, but doing more drills that are fun, still competitive, but more so I'm trying to beat the other person as opposed to beat my score. So understanding that we don't have to track everything all the time and that it can be more, hey, just go beat her in the drill.
I think that's especially on the girl side, where, again, generalist comment, where most of my male basketball players over the years are irrationally confident. And many of my female players over the year, I'm like trying to pull teeth to get them to do things that they're capable of because they don't have that same belief system. So it's like, how do the competitive scenarios increase that versus the confidence building ones? And it's again, it's a tough target to hit sometimes. So I like the fact that you're coming to that realization sometimes. Anything else on your end before we wrap up and you go out to Mustang Festival?
Yeah, I just have a question. I was of the end. You are at your best when blank.
Woo! Man, I don't know that I can answer that, coach, because again, the way in which we perceive ourselves is always jaded. I think I'll do it this way. I'm at my best when I am in pattern and routine. So when this is the first year that I can remember since COVID where I have not missed a workout this year. So we lift in the mornings, started in August, have been through it the whole time. My son and I go with another group of kids. Not really even an invite, it's just quiet, like Breakfast Club thing. Whoever wants to come can come. And I think part of it has been the fact, right? He's a sophomore now, we're each other's accountability buddies. When he's not getting up or when I'm not, it's right there. And I know that as much as sometimes it's hard to get up, I'm at my best when I get that in the morning because then it's not like hanging over your head. It liberates you to do other things. And then I think the other piece is when the culture exists in that people are willing to offer and give feedback to you. So, like my boss twice in the last 3 weeks has been, hey, can I give you some feedback? And she does that just as an entry point. She knows, like, she's actually said, I'm elite at receiving it. I apply it. I don't take it personally. And it's like, yeah, of course. And then she'll let me know. And I'm like, cool, appreciate it. Won't happen again. And it was a day maybe a week and a half ago where I actually got it from my boss and my direct report about the exact same thing. And it was like getting it from both sides, right? Then allows you to sit with it and process and be like, damn, you don't want to mess those things up. It was an innocent deal, but it didn't land the way you wanted. So I think I'm at my best when I have people around me that are truth tellers and aren't going to shy away from a tough conversation because that's what you need. Or what we tell our athletes, hey, why don't you go talk to coach? I don't want to. I want to hear it. It's, we all want the feedback. If not, we think everything is fine. But it's also like the pretend thing we've created in our own mind. My door's open. They can tell me,
Yeah.
depending on title and role and like how accessible you are. Being in routine and having feedback loops that are authentic, that are trusted, and that are real, where you will have somebody punch you in the mouth when you do something wrong, but because they want what's best for you. It's almost like we give our kids. And I think from our standpoint, how do you lead and coach and expect our kids to be receptive when we aren't. And so I
Mhm.
just try to always take it from that perspective. Doesn't always feel good. You sit with it, you spin on it a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's, hey man, I appreciate you letting me know that.
Yeah. I'll leave you with this because everything's patterns. That was the sermon on Sunday about being a good friend, telling the truth. So look at that. It all
Hey,
pattern. It's all pattern.
I love it.